Yeah. So now I would like to move on through the session and introduce now my COO, Stephen Crawley. Now, Stephen, I've worked with probably the last sort of 6 months. I really get to know him and sort of his sort of extensive experience, really, not just with the education training sector, but also the industry of manufacturing as well. So, Steve has previously worked in manufacturing for a number of years. Making that sort of transition over into the education training industry and really sort of connecting the dots for employers and also training organisations about upskilling, about improving the efficiency within the organisation as well. Now, Steve, I'll give you a couple of moments just to sort out from the technical side in terms of slides and things like that. But so, what we're going to be talking about is, lean manufacturing is going to be that key part. The role that lean manufacturing plays within today's manufacturing organisations, and really how we're supporting it as well in some of those case studies. So fantastic, Steve. Over to yourself, but you are still muted at the moment, anyway.
Hello, good morning, everybody. It's nice to meet you and thank you for joining us today. I think in the background it looks like I'm in the kitchen at home, but I'm actually in the office at work. So it's glad to see everybody. And thank you for joining us for Unleashing Lean Manufacturing Potential. I've had an introduction from Martin in terms of being the Chief Operating Officer at Pathways, and I joined the business earlier in the year in January and started actually working here in August. And prior to that, I'd been in the sector up till 1996. And before then, I spent most of my early career in manufacturing, working in organisations such as Thorn EMI and Jaguar Cars. What we're looking to talk about today is the ongoing challenges that's facing the manufacturing sector, particularly looking at the skills gap, and that's a growing concern from some of the reports that we've read recently. So really, I was going to kick off with a bit of a question. I'm not asking for any answers on this, but in your organisation, do you look at waste control and how you can reduce waste? And do you know what the percentages of waste is? In a lot of organisations, it's a lot more than people actually think is really happening, and it can be a real drain on business and resources. One of the ways to look at that and to get around it is looking at how you measure your quality cost model. And on a little diagram here, right, if you look at the left-hand side where it's current, you'll have some organisations that will spend some money on prevention to make sure that they've got the right staff in place with the right tools and the training and the processes and procedures in place. But talent is your biggest asset and our biggest asset in any organisation. So getting people in place as being the biggest asset needs to make sure that you're giving them everything, all the tools they need to get it right first time. Very often costs are then spent on appraisal costs, where people are checking and measuring and looking at products, whether that's visual inspections or actually looking at particular strengths of materials, etc. Sam will talk about this a bit later in terms of NDT. But very often, if things go wrong, we resort to 100% inspection, checking every product, and obviously that's really costly, and it means it's a real time on resources and draining costs. The other things that we have in terms of failures can be internal failures when you're in your organisation. If you find that you're not achieving productivity, it might be that your production line stopped and you've got downtime. It could be that you're in a situation where products are not to the right specification, or it could be that parts are being made late. And this can result in customer complaints, where customers might be complaining because the parts are not there. It might be that you've ordered furniture that's not turned up on time. It could be components not on time. And as soon as we start to get external failures such as complaints, customer returns, or even more important, warranty claims where you have to pay money back, those costs can really be significant. And in most businesses, if it's not measured, you're not really doing anything about it. So if you have a look at the slide on the right hand side, what a lot of businesses do is they look at the talent that they've got in the business, and start to invest money in prevention costs. So they look to introduce staff training, making sure that the staff have got the right tools, we've got the right processes and procedures in place. People are motivated, they're working together, and probably more importantly, that their staff have a voice to make a change. Very often, the biggest asset to the business are the people that can say, well, if we did this, this, and this would be the improvement. And not all changes need to be massive. Small changes and lots of more small changes can make a huge improvement. What that does, it gives you a real foundation to work on, and that can be through upskilling existing staff, using programs that are fully funded, such as AB funding. I won't use too much jargon, but there's a lot of funding from the government in terms of upskilling your existing staff through programs such as AB and apprenticeships, and then we've also got boot camps. So when we look to use our funding, we'd like to try and support employers to introduce prevention and make it improve by investing in the staff. Once the staff are invested in, we can look at appraisals and reduce appraisal costs. Everybody's responsible for quality, so it shouldn't be a different area of the business checking everything. We should all be checking everything all of the time, even if that's paperwork, if you're in a funding environment, or if you're in a process environment, or checking the food if you're making products. This reduces the internal failure, so you find that you have production targets achieved, less scrap, less downtime, and by improving your internal failures, you get more efficiency and better productivity from your team. And if this in turn then improves customer satisfaction, reduces external failures, we end up then with potential savings, and very often those savings can be 2 to 3 times more than the annual profits. So it's a really significant way of just spending a bit of thinking time about what we can do to improve in our organisations, and this could be in any organisation. So failure to meet production targets is important everywhere, and a lot of people think lean is just about manufacturing. But if you have a look at some of the sectors that people can be in, if you take sort of the NHS, there's a real problem at the moment with waiting lists, and that's a failure really of having the resources and the staff and the productivity to meet the needs. It could be in logistics where we're not getting there on time, and you could include the train service in there, where there's been lots of complaints about the way that the trains have been functioning, particularly over the last 3 years, and I guess lots of people claiming money back when they've got there late. It could be in the food sector where they can have issues and not meeting demand in terms of products. So try not to think about lean as just being in a particular sector, and I've got a few examples of how this works in NHS, local authorities, manufacturing and food that I'll go through in a few minutes. One example that I've got really in terms of quality control, some of the data shows that some organisations are still having problems with quality control. One of the first companies I worked with was a bakery, a small bakery in Derby, and they were producing French sticks for Sainsbury's. And I happened to be there on a day where there was a real big argument taking place, where the night shift were producing French sticks that were a lot bigger than the day shift French sticks. So Sainsbury's were getting all these French sticks coming in, and although it might sound a bit absurd, the French sticks were all different sizes, and it was because there was a problem in standardisation. The chap was on the night shift was saying his recipe and his instructions but needed to be followed. The chap on the day shift was saying his recipes and his instructions needed to be followed. And because they were falling out and there were two teams together, both on the night and day shifts, it nearly ended up in fisticuffs, but it also meant that they nearly lost a really valuable contract. So it really, really shows the importance of making sure that you're on top of your quality control. In terms of moving forward and growing adoption of lean manufacturing techniques, the latest data is showing that 65% of companies have embraced lean, and you might be one of those organisations, but there's another 35% that aren't using it. And I wanted to just give you a brief example. My first example of lean was in a company called Parkinson Cowan that made gas cookers. They had 8 production lines that were producing cookers. We had a really archaic system where everything was really, really slow. We weren't getting information. We had a new quality manager came in. We put in LED lights over each of the production lines, and we're measuring productivity by the hour. And what we could see was what our right first time was. We wanted 100% right first time. And using data, we could see where the slowest production was, where we're not hitting targets, and it also identified the 3 biggest defects. That gave us the data we need to use in our staff to step in and to bring about improvements, and that improved efficiency in terms of productivity. And we did the same thing in terms of reducing waste in our stores, which had lots of products that we weren't using. And by increasing revenue and reducing costs, it made a real efficiency improvement in the business. So it's really worthwhile looking at what you can do to improve things in your organisation. And by taking a step back, you can put in a programme that might be over 2 years that makes a significant difference to your organisation. What we're doing at the moment is to move forward and support organisations in this presentation, specifically with boot camps, but we'll come back later to our overall offer. And we've put together a team of growing and experienced lean professionals who are identified here. And these are the people that have worked in Jaguar, Renault Chain, JCB and Toyota with over 80 years experience. Our chairman, a chap called Alan Hill, used to work at Michelin. And we've got a much wider team with employer engagement staff and recruitment staff. And there'll be a photograph of Claire Whittingham in a few minutes, who's our head of boot camps. But the team have got a lot of experience. And between the team, over the last few years, we've had a number of successes. I'm not going to go into lots of detail, but if I can flick through some of these, we work quite closely with Southern Water, that we're implementing Kaizen and continuous improvement techniques to improve quality, cost and delivery, and involved a number of their staff. We work with the customer service team that didn't think that lean applied to them, but by working together, they were trying to get some of the tenants that they were working with to switch over to water meters. They were sending out correspondence that was just being totally ignored. So the team did some brainstorming and came up with an idea to produce a cube, which was a flat pack that flipped up into a cube and it went through the letterbox. And it meant then when people came home from work, as well as sort of picking up the pizza leaflets and the curry leaflets and all the other stuff that you get posted through your door every day, there was a cube on the floor that said, please contact Southern Water. We need to speak to you about water meters. And their success rate in terms of turning things around and getting people to go onto the water meters was really significant. It improved their sustainability program, and it was part of their annual accounts and their annual reports. We work with another organisation called ZAR, where they've got 26 Black Belt Six Sigma specialists who weren't working in teams. So we set up around 30 teams in the business with 300 staff over 2 years, learning business improvement techniques. The business itself made so many savings. They saved 1.4 million. It was a 98% export business in inkjet printers. But the reason they did it wasn't to save money, it was to actually align the staff and bring them together and to improve the morale of the whole workforce. And by using techniques like this and giving everybody a voice, it can make a massive difference to your business. And there's a final one that shows just even with small businesses, by making changes to what you're doing in terms of workplace organisation, sorting out storage systems, giving new visual management systems in place, you can make what might seem to be small savings to us looking at those 2 large ones, but 160k in a small SME was a significant saving. All of these areas revolved around people, working with people, using the biggest asset, as we just talked about at Bentley, to measure, use techniques and processes to drive performance. And what I wanted to do was to sort of share the lean processes and principles with you. And after we switch over to Sam Cunningham, that's going to talk about how valuable it is in NDT, we'll come back and talk about our boot camp and what the boot camp offer is in detail. Thank you very much. So can I pass over now to Sam Cunningham, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for your time there, Steve. Just before you shoot off there, we have had 2 questions come through. One is from Nikki asking, are you able to do this at an international level? Now, I know ourselves, we aren't sort of on that level ourselves, but I do believe the likes of the accreditation, so you mentioned about the likes of Six Sigma and things as you were going through. I do believe these are sort of an international and sort of internationally recognised practices as well. So there may be another conversation that we can sort of support with as well. Is there anything else that you'd have to say on sort of lean at an international level at all there, Steve? Sorry, Steve, just in terms of leaning on an international...
Just been put on the system. Can you hear me okay, Martin?
Yes, that's it. I can hear you fine now, mate. Yes, yes. So just in terms of...
There are actually, there's international standards that you can use, and there are some European standards, particularly for Lean and Black Belt Six Sigma. So one of the things we can do is have a discussion outside of here about how we might put the person involved in the right direction there. So leave that with me, and we'll pick it up towards the end. But there's definitely something we can support with there in terms of referral.
And we've also had another question from Natalia about courses in quality control. Now, I know these are elements within the skills bootcamp, and it may be sort of a sufficient area, but again, we can look at sort of target on those. And then I know a couple of other questions have come in, but we will look to pick these up on the site, because I know we're sort of tight for time